So today we're going to be factoring quadratic trinomials. A quadratic trinomial is a trinomial that's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. This is your quadratic term. The bx is your linear term. And the c is your constant term. So you factored quadratic trinomials yesterday. You factored ones like this example here. This is a quadratic trinomial. A is 1, B is -1, and C is -12. It's in that form. And it's easy to factor this when you have a leading coefficient of 1. So when A is 1, it's really easy to factor. You saw that yesterday. When you have a leading coefficient of 1, what you can do is you can go straight to the factors. So what you do is you put x and x down. And then what you do is you look at your C and B value. You're going to ask yourself, what multiplies to be C and adds to be B? What two numbers multiply to be -12 and add to be -1? So the two numbers that multiply to be -12 and add to be -1 are -4 and +3. So this expression factors to the expression x minus 4 times the quantity x plus 3. And you're done. Nice and easy to do. And it's easy again because we have a leading coefficient of 1. Today we're going to look at quadratic trinomials that don't have a leading coefficient of 1. How do we factor those? Alright, so let's look at this example. I want to factor this expression here. So my A value is 6, my B value is 7, and my C value is -5. So this is a quadratic trinomial. The first step after you identify it as a quadratic trinomial is to look for a greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor? Is there a number or letter that goes in all three of these? No, there's not. So what we're going to do now is we want to change it so it has a leading coefficient of 1. So we want to get rid of this 6. To do that, we're going to use this method called slip and slide. So the first step in slip and slide is to take your leading coefficient and slip it to the back. So when you slip it to the back, now we have x squared plus 7x. And when you slip it to the back, you got to multiply it by that last number. So 6 times -5 is -30. Now it's like that example I just did. We have a leading coefficient of 1. So I'm going to ask myself, what multiplies to be this last number? So what multiplies to be -30? I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be -30 and add to be 7. And if you don't know how to find them, what you can do is list out all the factors of 30. So let's list all the factors of 30 out. We got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. We want them to multiply to be -30. So that means one of your factors needs to be negative. And we want it to add to be 7. So of these combinations, if I make one of these numbers negative, who did I get? 7. Yeah. If I make the 3 here negative and the 10 positive, that will give me 7. -3. -3 plus 10 is 7. -3 times 10 is -30. So these are the two numbers I'm looking for. So this expression factors to the quantity x minus 3 times the quantity x plus 10. And now this is not my answer, however, because this was not the original problem. This wasn't the original problem. the original problem was 6x squared. And the method I'm using is called slip and slide. We did the slip part, so now we're going to do the slide part. So that number that you slip to the back, now you got to slide it back into your answer. And then reduce. So reduce these fractions. 3 over 6 reduces down to 1/2. 10 over 6 reduces down to 5/3. So now, the last step now is to get rid of the fractions if you have any. And you do that by just taking the denominator and move it to the coefficient of the x in each of your expressions. The factors are the quantity 2x minus 1 times the quantity 3x plus 5. So what this means is if you took this answer and you did FOIL, you use FOIL, what you would do is you would multiply those together, and the answer you would get would be this answer that we started with, this expression that we started with, 6x squared plus 7x minus 5. Alright, let's try another one. So let's identify it. Is this a quadratic trinomial? Is it in the form ax squared plus bx plus c? It is. Next, let's look for GCF. Is there a greatest common factor? Is there a number or a variable that goes into all three of these terms? No. So no GCF. So now let's get a leading coefficient of 1. By using slip and slide method. So we're going to take the 10 and slip it to the back. So now we got x squared plus 17x plus 30. So now I'm going to ask myself what multiplies to be, what two numbers multiply to be 30, and at the same time add to be positive 17. So when you think about that, I'll put down our factors here. We got x something and another x something. We got to figure out what that something is. Well, the something is going to be positive 2 and positive 15. It's 2 times 15 is 30. 2 plus 15 is 17. What method did I use? Slip and slide. So I did the slip part, now I got to do the slide part. So I got to slide the 10 that I slipped in the beginning back into our problem. And then reduce. 2 over 10 reduces down to 1/5. 15 over 10 reduces down to 3/2. And then last, if you end up with fractions, let's get rid of the fractions by taking our denominator and moving it to the coefficient of the x in each of the expressions. So we get the quantity 5x plus 1 times the quantity 2x plus 3. So these are my factors of this expression here. All right, let's look at another example here. Again, is this a quadratic trinomial? It is. Did you look for a GCF? Is there a greatest common factor? Is there a number or letter that goes into all three of these? There is. You can divide all three of them by 2. So let's factor out the GCF. So what do we get? We get 2 times the quantity 3x squared plus x minus 2. So now what I got to try to do is I got to try to factor this part. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep bringing down the 2. But on this part, I'm going to use slip and slide. So slip in the 3 to the back. So I get x squared plus x minus 6. What's in front of the middle term? A 1 there. So I'm asking myself, what two numbers multiply to be negative 6 and add to be positive 1? Two numbers that multiply to be negative 6 and add to be positive 1. So the two numbers are positive 3 and negative 2. And again, we're using slip and slide. What do we slip to the back? The 3. So now I gotta slide the 3 back into my answer. And then reduce. So here's gonna be my answer. I got the 2 I poured out at the very beginning. And then 3 over 3 reduces down to 1. 2 over 3 can't be reduced, but we don't want to leave the fraction, so just move that 3 in front of the x. We get 3x minus 2. So here are your factors. This one has 3 factors because it had a GCF that we had to factor out in the beginning. You can't leave the GCF off your answer or it's wrong. But one last example. Maybe you should take a moment and pause the video and work this example out before I work it out. See if you get it correctly. Alright, so it's a quadratic trinomial. Does it have a GCF? It does. What goes in all 3 of these? 3 does. So I'm going to factor out a 3. And now I'm going to try to use slip and slide to factor the middle part. So I'm going to take this 2 and slip it to the back. So now I have x squared plus 5x plus 6. Now I want to try to factor this. So I gotta ask myself, what 2 numbers multiply to be positive 6 and at the same time add to be 5? So if you said 2 and 3, you are correct. And then the 2 that I slipped in the beginning, I got to slide that 2 back into my answer because I'm using slip and slide. So we got our GCF that we poured out in the beginning. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we get the quantity x plus 1. 3 divided by 2 can't be reduced. Don't write it as a decimal either. Okay? So we got to take the fraction, the denominator of the fraction, and move it to in front of the x. So we get the quantity 2x plus 3 here. So here are my factors of this expression up there.